You're listening to Searching for More, a podcast of the Diocese of Arlington. On this episode, Sister Mary Sheila, principal of St. Thomas Aquinas Regional School in the Diocese, discusses what parents and students are facing as Catholic schools reopen safely with a variety of different options as part of the new normal.
Having a child is like having your heart walk around outside your body.
Yeah.
You know, and that feeling of this is the most important part of you, so vulnerable. And it's your vocation to protect and foster that little soul.
Hear Sister Mary Sheila offer peace in this time of uncertainty. This episode's host is Billy Atwell, Chief Communications Officer for the Catholic Diocese of Arlington.
Sister, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
So you're the principal at St. Thomas Aquinas Regional School. I want to learn a little bit about the school, its background, as well as the sisters that are serving there.
So back in 1977, a little over 40 years ago, the bishop of this diocese invited our sisters from Nashville, Tennessee, we're the Dominican Sisters of St. Cecilia, to come and found a Catholic school because there was no Catholic school in the area. We're located in Woodbridge. Okay. And rather than making it a school to serve one parish, the bishop asked the sisters to found a regional school. So this is a school that's been regional from its very beginning, serving multiple parishes. And it's beautiful because it really has the charism of our sisters for that reason.
I see. How many students are there?
About 500 in a typical year.
Okay.
We're looking at reopening with a little over 400 this year.
Okay.
Because we've capped our class sizes in order to honor social distancing.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So talk about the charism of the sisters a little bit for those who aren't familiar with your order, or the Dominicans, or any orders. You know, what's the gift that your order brings?
The Dominicans were founded. St. Dominic lived around the same time as St. Francis of Assisi, and more people are familiar with St. Francis.
Right.
So similar time frame, medieval times, and heresy was rampant. So Dominic, his heart was moved to do what he could as a priest to convert those who were believing what was false, and going in the wrong direction. So he founded an order. The name of the order is the Order of Preachers. So people shorthand us Dominicans, but after our name we'll have the initials OP for Order of Preachers. So he founded an order that would study the truth, so study is part of our charism, and go out and preach it to others. So for the sisters, we preach by teaching. And it's a contemplative, active order. So that means that we live a monastic life. I live at home a lot like a cloistered nun would.
Okay.
Contemplative, and we have practices like cloistered nuns would with hours and places of silence and prayer. But then we go out into the apostolate and teach and preach.
Very good. When did you first feel called to education? Obviously, you feel called to the Dominicans, but when did you feel that you were an educator at heart?
For me, the two were around the same time. It's different for every sister.
Yeah.
For me, when I was in elementary school, I look back and laugh because I was realizing now I was having these thoughts as a third grader. I remember thinking at that time I wanted to teach, and my third grade teacher asked me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I told her, "I want to be a nun or a teacher or both."
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, so listen to third graders.
Yeah, really.
We get confused later on. And I remember thinking at that time that I wanted to teach second grade because when they were little, they were still eating paste. And when I remember thinking to myself, by the time they're in third grade, their personality is pretty much set. So I want to go in second grade. So it's funny that as a third grader, I was thinking that.
That is so funny.
But yes, and as I got older, I grew up in California. And California is big and has lots of different views. And where I grew up, sometimes I say I grew up in the coffee shops of California as a teenager with a mix of friends that were all different faiths. And we would sip coffee and solve the world's problems.
Yeah, right.
And
as teenagers do.
Yes,
right?
And debate things like objective truth. And so I was drawn more to my faith and challenged more to be able to explain it. And so I decided that, if I'm going to teach, this is what I need to teach because it's the most important thing and it's the only thing that lasts forever.
So how long have you been a sister now?
I entered the convent in 97.
Okay. All right. So about 23 years or so.
Yes.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Well, you've been, in recent weeks and months, you've been challenged in ways that you've never been challenged before. Despite what you've faced, none of us have gone through anything like we have with COVID-19 and all the issues that's brought. And one of the major questions for so many people for so long was, well, what is school going to look like? What's funny is, for a while we were thinking, well, the kids will go back before the end of the school year. There's no way they wouldn't go back. Like, how would that ever happen? Well, we didn't go back, and the Diocese of Arlington schools have been so credited for turning on a dime, and in literally a few days, we're suddenly providing online education, and we're able to, kind of virtually teach, and certainly the case with your school as well. So through the summer, you've been having to prepare for what could the fall look like. And it's picked up pace as of late. Talk a little bit about the deliberation process you all went through, and what were some of the things you had to consider about whether or not you would open, whether or not you'd be able to open purely in class, whether it would be a hybrid model. What were some of those
Sure.
key kind of milestones maybe of things you had to consider?
Sure, and before I answer that, I want to totally agree with you. I've been marveling at how our outlook has changed, because back in March, it was unthinkable that school would close for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So we were preparing our faculties, okay, in case we have to close for not just a snow day, but 2 weeks.
Right.
Here's what we would do, and then it closed for a month for us, and then till the end of the year. And that was just unthinkable. Strongly agree with you on that. And I've been marveling at how we have completely flipped in our thinking to now people are struggling with, it's unthinkable for them to go back sometimes.
I know.
And it's so just strange.
We're an adaptable creature, I think.
I guess so. And I want to agree with you too that it was amazing in the Diocese of Arlington how adaptable the teachers were. That yes, in a few days. So at Aquinas, the teachers really within a few days went to a distance learning model, learned all kinds of new platforms and softwares, and we're really dedicated and working, I think, triple time. Putting in the man hours were triple time of prep for them to all of a sudden have to find materials online and help. It was a lot of work. So when we began to prepare for the fall, I was first of all praying that we could go back in person in some fashion, because the teachers did, and the families, as a team, did a phenomenal job in the spring, but everyone was worn out. Yeah. And so I was praying that even if it was only a little bit hybrid, 2 days a week, could we please go in person, because we could see that the children needed it. That there are trade-offs, with COVID. Anything that you do is a risk, but so is getting in your car to drive somewhere in the morning is a risk.
Exactly.
There are risks on the other side about continuing to have the children isolated,
We talked about on the Bishop's podcast yesterday, we talked about kind of the mental health consequence of COVID, and I think that extends to kids to a huge degree.
Oh, yes, because it's their formation, their time of formation. So I was praying that we would be able to go back in some fashion in person, and I was praying for that, hoping that the numbers that we were all watching would allow us to go back at least hybrid. And then I was surprised when the opportunity became available to go back with 3 feet of social distancing. So the World Health Organization and the American Association of Pediatrics and other places have felt it was so important for students to go back in person that they were advocating, that this is okay, to have 3 feet of social distancing. And the Diocese of Arlington offered that opportunity to us. And so I was surprised at first that it might be possible for us to go 5 days a week in person with the students. And I had wanted all summer to have a Zoom parent meeting so that we could be live and interactive with the parents to get their thoughts. And as we were making this decision, I considered that format and realized that it would quickly turn into a big debate and might not be really helpful because there's such a variety of strong opinions out there. So rather than I've postponed, and we had a Zoom more recently when our plans were clearer and we could answer questions. But early on, we took a survey, a very simple one. I believe in simple, short surveys, and asked our teachers as well as our families how comfortable they were with the idea of going back at 3 feet so that we could bring our students 5 days a week. And I was surprised at the response, and also we had an open-ended comment section at the end, and I felt that was better than a Zoom because I could hear every single person got a chance to speak that way,
Yeah.
And they did. And I read them all. I was surprised. We gave them like a Likert scale. How comfortable are you with the 3 feet? Anything from very uncomfortable to very comfortable. That for the teachers and the parents, the most common response was very comfortable.
Yeah.
And I was surprised because our survey closed the week before the governor advertised this opportunity. The governor of Virginia updated the phase guidance for schools.
Interesting.
To include this option. So I thought it was, that gave me confidence that not only were the parents, the majority of them, very comfortable with the idea, but it was mostly the first time they were hearing of it, and I heard that come through in the comments. So I was hoping that if that many were very comfortable with it before the governor explained it was a thing, that after it became more well known, that they would only be more comfortable. And I was surprised on the survey we gave to the teachers that they were even more comfortable with it than the parents.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. And it's been interesting, too, to see, most of the public schools in our diocese have closed down or at least they're doing the virtual school kind of for the foreseeable future. I mean, it's really interesting because I don't know that that's where most parents are, so and they've got other challenges, lunchrooms are very different.
Yes.
The busing system for public school is very different than we have for private schools.
And just not the tight-knit community of the Catholic school. Every family who's in a Catholic school has made a sacrifice.
Yeah, and an
to
investment.
be there. Right. So there's a tighter-knit community that you can communicate with and work together on things.
Yeah, that certainly helps. And it's been, I think the best thing is parents have a choice now. Mm-hmm. There isn't just the virtual or homeschool, right? I mean, which is there's so much overlap between the two in terms of the time commitment of a parent, but that there are schools that are open 5 days a week. There are other schools that are doing a hybrid model where the kids are maybe in 2 days or 3 days, depending on the structure of the school. But that's part of the kind of the core of Catholic education is that the parent has to own the model that they choose for their kid, that they are the primary educator and the school is assisting them.
There is a difference, too, between the families, the parents of the public school and the Catholic school. One of our teachers called me on recently because I wasn't thinking about this enough, the faith. Yeah. The parents who are bringing their children to Catholic school trust God.
Yeah.
And now is a time where we really need that because you can't trust anything else. Every 3 days there's a new law or a new rule or a new phase or a new...
It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it does make you question, like, where do I get my peace from? Is it from the consistency of the schedule that I know the schools, the buses will run on time and that, all those kind of things? Or is it in God? Because everything around me can be like a hurricane.
Yes.
But if I don't have peace, then I put my reliance on peace on the wrong thing. It's challenged me. Mm-hmm. I haven't always felt peace. I'll
really
tell you that.
Learned it.
I've had to work hard to recenter that, and I'm still working on it. I think a lot of people are. It's especially as a parent, where there are changes. A lot of the Catholic schools have moved back their start days, so that's kind of a disruption for parents. But they also trust that there's a reason for that. The school's not doing that for no reason, and they do have trust, and that's part of the community. I think too that is a benefit in Catholic education is that you trust and the administrators of your school. Not everybody has that opportunity. Mm-hmm. Not everybody has that.
And you mentioned that there's like third options now between homeschool and there's virtual school, Catholic school, virtual school, hybrid, all these different opportunities. Aquinas is offering an at-home learning model for families who opt for that. And it's been difficult for our families to know how we're defining that because different schools are doing different things for that. So at Aquinas, when I published our plans, and part of what makes me feel safe about going back to school in person is that we have real fleshed out plans of how we would move to a hybrid model or to an e-learning model and do it even better than before. And we've shared that with the parents and detailed it even more with the teachers so that we're ready if we need to do that. I'm hoping that means we'll never have to use it. We're so ready.
Yeah, right.
But in the meantime, if there are families who hope to bring their children back or want to stay a part of our school community but aren't comfortable bringing them in person or aren't comfortable starting the year in person, we've offered an at-home learning model where it's not that our teachers cannot do what they did in the spring where it was triple the prep time and have children in front of them all day that they're being attentive to.
Right.
They can't do both. So it sounds, at first when I was thinking hybrid, I was like, oh, they'll come 2 days a week, and 2 days a week they'll do what we did in the spring. And then I realized, no, if they're coming and the other group is coming, the teacher has kids every day.
Yeah.
And it took them triple the time to do what they did, they can't do both. And so what we've done at Aquinas is we're one of the schools in the diocese that's piloting a new learning management system called Schoology. And so it's just an online platform where the teachers have all of their classes and assignments and grade books, and the parents can see, so the child can go in and see all of their classes in the same place, and the parent can go in and see all of their children in the same, platform. The teachers at Aquinas are going to post assignments and assessments for not just homework, but classwork. And then the parents are helping them with those at home to keep pace with the kids that are in school. And then we've assigned some of our teachers as online tutors who will meet with those children just twice a week. So it's not that they're instructing them every day in every class, but they're working with their parents as well as with this online tutor who's in communication with the teacher and helping them keep pace with the class. And then once a week, they have, most of them on Fridays, a meeting with their homeroom. So a quick Zoom with the homeroom teacher and the other students in the homeroom to pray together, check in and talk about their week, and do a quick fun activity so that they stay socially connected too. And it's good that the tutors online are meeting with children in small groups, so there's some social connection for them that way too.
That's great. What have been some of the burdens you've seen from parents? Parents are experiencing different stresses. Like, what are some of the things that you've witnessed that you've personally had to walk parents through?
I think there's a lot of confusion and fear.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to the parents, and I've been praying for them because I can see, you and I were talking earlier about a quote from a favorite author of mine who said that having a child is like having your heart walk around outside your body.
Yeah.
And that feeling of this is the most important part of you, so vulnerable, and it's your vocation to protect and foster that little soul, right? So every parent has that vocation to protect and foster the life of this little soul and draw them to heaven, right? Prepare them for heaven. And right now, it's very unclear to parents, what does it mean to protect this little person that God has entrusted to me? Because there's so much out there, and I am not a medical expert or a research scientist, and I can read things, I know because parents send them to me, from medical experts.
They're not shy.
No, and that's good. I want them to, because we're kind of a think tank too. So they've helped me foresee questions that I might not have on my own. But I have mercy, and I just relate to them, the struggle of parents, because from what they send me, I can see that medical experts disagree.
Yeah.
Research disagrees. And so when you have a responsibility for this fragile little soul, that it's very difficult when you're responsible to protect and you're not sure what is the danger and how am I supposed to protect them.
Yeah.
And I know that it's good for them to go back, and they need to. It's I know a very hard place for parents, and we've heard from them over the summer, and I know even as we were approaching school, we've had a lot of turnover in our enrollment, very friendly partings, with families that are just deciding that until COVID goes away, they're going to homeschool or, take a different option. The St. Isidore Virtual School that's provided by the diocese or different things. But it's hard. At Aquinas, those who are on the at-home learning model are paying full tuition because we're holding a seat for them in the in-person classroom.
Yeah.
So that if everything goes well and they feel more comfortable and they feel more safe, some of them are opting for the at-home. They might stay on that plan for the year, but others, I think, because they're waiting to see what feels safe for them.
I was talking with a pastor. This shows you how much many parents love Catholic education, especially in this diocese. He said a parent said, listen, we're worried about everything, so what we're going to do is we're going to homeschool for the next year, but we'll pay tuition for you to hold the spot for our child.
Wow.
I was like, that is a committed parent. I mean,
Yeah.
that's quite an investment. I mean,
And someone with means. Not everyone has the luxury of being able to do
yes.
that.
I was not making that offer, but I mean, it just showed though that they could have spent that money on anything. You know, they could have done, but that was important for them to spend it to literally not receive anything in return for it except the opportunity to do it again the next year.
Yeah.
That was to me a good sign of faith.
It's very good, and this diocese, Arlington, is really blessed. I think that parents I think that we're really blessed here that there's really an appreciation for Catholic school, that the difference of coming to a Catholic school is not just a safer education or more academic education, but to be centered in Christ. 100%. And you cannot get that anywhere else.
No,
it's
true.
Christ in the sacraments, and to have that be all day, to have your children living in that atmosphere.
You're right, too, about the stress that it puts on parents about their kid, because if they're not socialized, there's a mental, psychological impact that has, there's a stress. The experience we had with our kids was, I only have one that was of school age last year in kindergarten. So he's out of school. We're doing the virtual learning and all that kind of stuff. And at one point, we thought the kids were doing fine. And then at one point, we sat them down, and my wife said, what's one thing you miss about school? Because the younger two were in preschool, and my oldest was at Holy Spirit. And they all started crying.
Oh.
And we hadn't just opened the floor for them to just tell us how you feel. Mm-hmm. And so when my wife said, I think the kids are a little stressed. I'm seeing little things, and I didn't say, I'm a knucklehead. I didn't say any of these things. And so when she sat them down and said, what's one thing you miss about school? They all had different, very poignant, specific things that they missed a lot. Maybe it was their teacher, or it was the water table at the preschool, or it was all these different things. And just poured their heart out, and we were like, oh no, we felt like such bad parents because we didn't even know they were carrying this burden and just acting like things were okay, and it wasn't. I'm like, that's not good. But also, I don't want them to get sick and to suffer. I've had cancer 3 times in my life. I don't want my kid to ever be, suffer physically.
Well, that's not going to happen.
No, I mean, no, but I'm saying if they get COVID, children are far less likely to experience the negative symptoms, but I don't want to even get close to that risk. Like you said, it's my heart walking out. I feel as vulnerable as possible with my kids. So you're having to balance goods and balance
you can't
the
protect
risks.
them from
I know.
everything. They're going to suffer something in life.
I know.
And it's actually good for us sometimes. Not that I want them to get sick with this virus, but I don't want them to get sick with this virus, but it's a false idea to think that a parent can protect their child from any physical suffering in life.
And that's been the learning experience for me and my wife is recognizing that.
And it is a trade-off, like what you're saying, the reaction you saw with your children. Yeah. That also is a risk.
100%.
There's a risk of this virus, but there is a large risk in their formation, not only psychologically, but spiritually. So as Catholics, we believe that God himself is a community of persons.
Yeah.
Right? The Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Yeah. And that we are made in the image and likeness of God. So we're made for community.
Yeah. And the tangible, the physical, that matters. We're not just spiritual beings.
No, we are body, soul.
Yeah, was it the philosopher Berkeley's idea of idealism, where all of this could be just immaterial. Well, that's not true, immaterial. And so, obviously in every sacrament there's a physical, right? With the Eucharist, there's a physical bread. And marriage, there's the people. There's there's always a physical, tangible. That's why we can't go to confession over the phone. We there's matters, and to be in community and relationship with people does mean proximity matters at some point. You can supplement with phone calls and virtual and so on, but we're not meant to live on supplements.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that There are many ways that the Lord can bring good out of this evil. He does that all the time, right? Like the crucifixion is the prime example of the Lord bringing good out of evil. Right. So this is his style. We know that he does this. And so as we sat through all of these, unthinkable things that were happening with the churches closing and the schools closing, I'm always wondering, what's the Lord going to bring out of this? And some of my ideas are pretty good, and I know that his are always better than mine. So I'm sure that he's going to bring great things out. But even, we might have taken going to Mass for granted. And so this could have fostered a hunger for the Eucharist. We might have been too much on our devices. Well, now we're saturated with screen time.
And we can't wait to get away from it.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that we all have more of an appreciation of what it means to be in person because we are body, soul. So I know that during, when Virginia was in phase 1 or 2, when I needed to meet with parents, we were doing that virtually or by phone. But as we entered phase 3, and parents, because they are making these difficult decisions, are struggling, and I know that it meant a lot to them when I invited them, how would you like to come see me in my office? Yeah. And we'll talk. I know that made a big difference for them. And that's the same difference that we want the children, to be able to be back in person.
That's exactly right. What do you think? So let's imagine a world down the road, COVID is largely either gone or we're able to manage it in a better way. I know. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. But what do you think will be some of the long-term effects of all the changes that we're making, the virtual education? Like, what are some of the long-term effects you think COVID will have on Catholic education?
Only the Lord knows.
Right.
I would hope that at Aquinas, we use a program called Virtues in Practice that was designed by the Dominican sisters. It's free online for anybody who wants it. The whole thing's free online.
What's
if you're a homeschooler. Virtues in Practice.
Okay.
And it teaches, it has activities and things for the children to learn each month about a virtue of the month and a saint who exemplified that virtue. So it's a Dominican thing, and especially from St. Thomas Aquinas, that we teach about virtue and happiness, like what makes us happy is part of the charism of the Dominican order. And we know that ultimately it's the Lord, and that virtue, a good habit or a strength, sets us free to be our best. So I am hoping that through this difficulty, all of us will grow in virtue. And I think of I know my grandparents lived through the Great Depression, and people who lived through that real difficulty had such strong character and real nobility of soul. So let's pray that for our children now, that coming through this will teach them how to make sacrifices, and how to do what's right and to be thoughtful of others. So in that virtue program, there's a 3-year cycle, faith, hope, and charity. And it's providential that this year at Aquinas is the year of charity, love of God and neighbor. And one of the virtues that we teach in that year is the virtue of courtesy. So at our school, the signage for wearing masks and social distancing is all rooted in the mission. So we have a sign on the front door that says, practice the virtue of courtesy, and has a mask.
That's so good.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
And it really is true that this is a new way right now for us to practice the virtue of courtesy, because the definition we teach them of courtesy is being thoughtful of others. So you're doing these things to be thoughtful of others.
Yeah.
So this is a virtue.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because I've had friends that said they didn't want to wear a mask or whatever, but they said, but it puts someone else at ease, whether it is effective or not. They're like, but it feels good for them.
And this is dangerous to say. In Arlington, I've been told there's many A-type parents around here, but I think that we can all agree too that one of the blessings that came out of this past spring was it has kind of slowed down our pace of life and made us all a little more flexible.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's
if you were inflexible before, you are flexible now. I think that's definitely true. Sister, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
Oh my goodness.
I don't want to miss anything. This has been such a wonderful conversation, but I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing with the kids
Thank
there.
you.
And I mean, you guys have such a wonderful ministry.
Thank you for your work here.
Thank you very much.
Getting the word.
All right. Where can they find out more about the school?
Our website is www.aquinasstars.org. So if you Google, the full name of the school is St. Thomas Aquinas Regional School, but we shorthand it Aquinas. And so if you Google Aquinas in Woodbridge, you'd find it.
Very good. Sister, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. God bless you.
You're listening to Searching for More. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a review on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Also, make sure you follow the Diocese and the Arlington Catholic Herald on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And subscribe to our YouTube channels for regular videos that inspire, educate, and inform about the Catholic faith in our diocesan community.